Please hold while I confirm your passcode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar, the BBC Advanced Webinar Series, Creating and Managing a Sourcing Event. The overview for this session is that it's been designed to get you started with creating and managing an RFP in SAP Ariba Sourcing. In order to do this, we'll focus solely on the creation and management of an RFP in a quick project. We'll learn all the types of events that Ariba offers, but we'll focus primarily on the creation of an RFP for this webinar. And our target audience for today is users who create and manage RFPs. And to create an RFP, you must be a member of one of the following groups. So in order to create an event within the system, the user must be assigned to one of these groups. Without one of these groups, they won't be able to create an event. The agenda for today, we are going to go and take a look at, we'll have an introduction to events. We'll find out what an event is. We'll look at creating events, publishing events, monitoring events, analyzing events, and awarding the events. So a lot about events today. So first, let's talk about what is an event. An event is an online interaction between suppliers and customers with rules to increase savings and competition. An event empowers you with online sourcing functionality, competitive bidding, advanced bid analysis tools, and multi-language and multi-currency features. So all of these things are available inside of what we call an event. It's a place where you as the customer can invite your suppliers to an event and they bid for your business is essentially what happens. And there are all kinds of rules and settings that we're going to learn about today that you can configure to make those events work the best for you. The next slide walks us through a quick view of a process, the sourcing event process. So we start with creation, and during that part of the process, the event is in draft. While it's in draft, that's when we're going to be adding content, things like line items, lots, questions, requirements, attachments, any type of information that we want to know about this particular event that we want to collect from our suppliers. That's what we do during draft. We're going to be adding all of that information, getting it checked, getting it approved, getting it reviewed, all of that good stuff. And then once you're finished adding all of your content into the event, we'll finish up with the creation phase, and that is publishing the event. Once the event is published, it may then go into a preview page when we start our monitoring phase. The monitoring phase is when we're viewing the responses that are coming in from the suppliers. The event is open for participation or in preview, meaning the suppliers can view it. When we publish the event, invitations are sent out to the suppliers and they are able to log into your site and access the event and view the content. Whether or not they can participate depends on this bidding start time and whether or not you've been able to preview period. While the event is open for bidding, suppliers will be submitting their responses until the bidding end time. And the bidding end time is when we enter into the evaluating stage, and this is when the event moves into pending selection. So at this point, we're going to evaluate all of the bids that have come in, and we're going to select a winner. Once we select a winner, we then award the event, and its status changes to completed. So that's a quick look at the cycle of an event and the process that it goes through. And also at any point during the time, as you can see on the slide here, you can cancel the event all the way up through pending selection until it's awarded. So before we start talking about events, we do need to know a little bit more about the terms that we're going to be hearing and seeing. One of those common terms is quick project. This is a generic term for any type of online sourcing event that is a standalone event. In other words, it's an event that is not part of a full project. When we create an event later during the demo, you'll see that there's a choice between a quick project and a full project. And when we talk about a quick project, this is what we mean by an event. Every quick project has a project owner. The project owner is the person, usually the person that creates the event, but they're also likely the person that is going to publish and manage the sourcing event as well. It is possible to change the owner from the person that creates. So in other words, you could have users within your organization that are responsible for creating the sourcing event, but they're not the ones that are going to publish it or manage it once it's created. We also have team members that are added to the quick project, and these team members help the project owner manage the sourcing event. So these are people that are added to the team tab that might have particular roles to do certain things within the project or within the event, such as edit the event or add additional questions or view participant messages, or maybe they're just observers who can only view the event. They just need to see it. And another common term is suppliers. or potentially participants depending on the type of event you're dealing with. But these are the people that respond to the sourcing event with bids and or information. In the case of a request for information, they would be responding with information and not bids. And then lastly, one of the most important terms is template. A template is a set of rules and content that determines the functionality and initial content of a particular event. And because of templates, we have event types. And there are 4 types of events, or quick projects as we learned, available in SAP Ariba Sourcing, and those are requests for information, request for proposal, auctions, and forward auctions. So because of templates, we have 4 different types of events, and the templates control how these events are going to work. So a little bit more about event templates. As we saw, a template is a set of rules and content that determines the functionality and initial content of a particular event. All events must be based on a template. It's not possible to create an event without selecting a template on which that event is based on. The templates streamline the process of event creation and content. In other words, it's not possible to create an event without a template. Since that's not possible, we can add content into the template so that every time a user creates an event using that template, that content is included. And that helps to streamline and create consistency across the different events and across different users all the way across your enterprise. Rules and content may also be adjusted within the event based on template settings. So certain rules and certain content can be added or removed by the project owners or restricted by the template owner. There's more on templates and rules in the next webinar. So if you do want to learn more about how to control rules and how to modify templates, you can tune into the next webinar on templates. But today we're going to talk mainly about the request for proposal. So let's get a little bit more information about that particular type of event. So requests for proposal, these are not directly competitive. What that means is suppliers are not logging into an RFP to compete like they would in an auction, where they would see their rank, their position within the market, and things like that. RFPs can also be open for an arbitrary amount of time. This can be several days or weeks, allowing participants to log in and respond at their convenience. Since a request for proposal is a request for an entire proposal on a project, it might take a little while for a supplier to prepare that proposal or to prepare the response to the proposal. And so for that reason, these types of events might be open a little bit longer to give the suppliers the ability to prepare a quality response. RFPs also allow you to transfer pricing to a follow-on auction if you would like to go down that path. So sometimes you might run an RFP and find that you have a lot of competition between the suppliers that you've invited into the RFP. They're all very close in their price, and you want to see if you can drive that price down a little bit further. You can actually copy that RFP into an auction and start those suppliers off at the prices they finished with in the RFP, and start them off with those prices in the auction to hopefully encourage them to drive down their prices a little bit further. While we're talking about the RFP, there are some limits that we need to be aware of when we're creating our content. There is a maximum of 500 questions or requirements. This is actually any type of content item that you can add within the content aside from lots and line items. Lots and line items have their own limits and restrictions. We can see that there's a maximum of 1,000 line items and lots in a non-competitive event. We have a maximum of 120 suppliers in large capacity events, but a maximum of 100 suppliers in most events. Any attachment type is supported within the event content as well. So within those 500 content items that you're allowed to have, you can upload any kind of attachment that you might have. So any kind of document is supported and can be uploaded into Ariba. And then also we can have up to 20 terms per line item. And terms are, we'll learn later in the demo, that terms are things that we can add to the lots and line items to collect additional pricing elements of those lots and line items. Great. There are 3 out-of-the-box templates that allow you to create specific types of RFPs. So while we have templates that create 4 event types, we also have templates that create 3 different kinds of RFPs that behave in specific ways. And the main differentiator between these is the pricing setup for the lots and the line items and the way that the rules are set. Users in the template creator group can create new templates or copy and modify existing templates. So in order to make changes to these 3 out-of-the-box templates, you need to be a template creator. and you would then be able to make a copy of these out-of-the-box templates and modify them to your organization's specifications. And as we mentioned earlier, there will be more information on templates in the next webinar. So the three different types of RFP templates that we have available out of the box are the request for proposal, which is the standard RFP template. We have the request for proposal with price breakdown. This is a template that allows you to create an RFP that instead of just collecting a price from the supplier, you can actually get a breakdown of that price. So for example, if I was running an event for computers, I would be able to create an RFP with price breakdown. In that RFP with price breakdown, I could create my line item, and that line item would be called computers. But then I would add pricing terms to that line item and collect the individual components of the computer, so the hard drive, the keyboard, the monitor, the mouse, the printer, all the different pieces, and I would ask the supplier to provide me a price for each piece of the computer, and then the system would automatically take those different components of the computer and add them together to give me a price for that computer. So I'm not just collecting the price of the computer, I'm collecting the components of that computer. How did the supplier arrive to the price for that computer? And then the next type is a request for proposal with total cost. This type of template allows you to create a standard RFP, but it allows the project owner to add additional cost factors, such as shipping fees, to calculate a total cost for each supplier. So a total cost RFP exists to allow you to collect all costs that might be incurred for sourcing this particular good or service. It might not be just the price of the good. There might be shipping costs, there might be tooling fees, there might be all kinds of different fees that might be associated with this particular good or item, and you can have the supplier give you a price for those particular things using an RFP with total cost. It allows you to get a bigger picture of the price and what sourcing this particular item is actually costing you and your company. Great, so now that we know a little bit about RFP templates, we get into the event creation wizard. This is something that the system provides for you to help guide you through the event creation process. It's a 5-step process broken down into rules, team, participants, content, and summary. The rules, these 5 steps don't actually necessarily need to be followed in this particular order. This is just the order in which they are presented to you. However, you can work on whichever section you'd like to work on at any time throughout the process. So if you create an event and the first thing you want to do is add your content, you can certainly go to step 4 and start adding your content into that event. There's no reason that you have to start with step number 1 and move all the way through. You can go through with each one. So the event creation wizard is broken down into different sections as well. So it's broken into, the rules is broken down, it's broken down into rules, team, suppliers, and content. So the first step, rules, is organized by section. We have the timing rules, the bidding rules, project owner actions, market feedback rules, and message board rules. These rules control what is visible to the supplier, and we're going to take a look at how some of these rules are set in the default RFP template. If you want more information on what you can do with these rules, be sure to tune in, as I mentioned a couple of times, to tune into our next webinar on sourcing templates. Also, the rules, the visibility of the rules and the availability of the rules is based on the admin settings in the template. So admins have the ability of hiding or showing rules to the event creators. So you might not know that a rule exists because you can't see it because it's been hidden at the template level. This is to help create consistency across the enterprise, so all of the events have the rules set in the same way and users can't change that. Also, some rules that you see are visible based on the answers to others. For example, there's a rule about enabling participant scoring on participant responses. If you set that to yes, additional rules will appear pertaining to scoring and what other options you have available to you. The next section is the team. The team are users who will assist in the creation and monitoring of the event. Roles will determine their view and creatability. So what types of actions can they take inside of the project will be assigned to the role on the project team on the team tab. The users that can be placed, or the members that can be placed into the groups on the team tab, can be users, system groups, or custom groups. Then the next step is the suppliers. This is where you'll invite your suppliers and your participants. The ability to create new is based on permission. So you might see a button to create a new participant when you're inviting a supplier, or you might not. It just depends on whether or not you have the permission to create participants. Then also here we recommend that before you create a new supplier, do make sure you're searching to see if that supplier already exists. And if that supplier does already exist, don't create it again. Go ahead and use that one that already exists so we can avoid duplicate suppliers. And the next section is the content, divided into two tabs. The definitions and the content. The definition determines the lot type availability. And then the content tab is to add questions, sections, requirements, attachments, and things like that that you'd like to be a part of every single type of event that you create. So the definitions tab is not going to be visible to those who create the event. The definitions tab is only going to be visible in the template. So when the administrator is creating that template, that's where that content is going to be coming from. Okay, so after we make it through the event creation wizard, the last step is the summary tab, and that's to publish an event. So the final step of event creation is to publish. It sends the invitation email to the invited supplier. So as soon as you click on that publish button, suppliers can then view the event, and they receive their invitations. Participation begins at this point as well, depending on the timing rules. So we might have a preview period where suppliers can log in and view the event, but it's not yet open for responses. Also, publishing the event can be subject to approval. If you are a member of the Junior Sourcing Agent Group, you will not be able to publish without approval from someone else within the organization. You can also set up a publish approval task on an event template so that it always requires publish approval, meaning someone else within the organization has to approve it before it can be published and launched out to suppliers. Prior to publishing the event, we do have a few recommendations. We may recommend that you review the summary tab for completeness and correctness. The summary tab will show you any errors with the content, anything that you need to correct before you will be able to publish. We also recommend that from the content tab or from the suppliers tab in the event creation wizard, you can view the event as a supplier. So before publishing it, it is helpful to view what the supplier is going to see, just to make sure it looks complete and correct, and it looks, like something you would want to send out to your suppliers, professional and all that jazz. And then lastly, send for Ariba review. There is a button on the summary tab of events that are not marked as tests. This won't be shown in the demo because the event we created in the demo is marked as a test. So you won't be able to see that Ariba review button. However, on your events that are not marked as test events, there will be an Ariba review button on the summary tab. This creates a request and sends it off to our support team, who will review your event and provide recommendations on how you might want to change your bid decrements or rearrange your content or your lots or your timing, things like that. Okay, after it's been published, the next thing we do, as we saw in the process, is to monitor an event. Why would we monitor the event? Well, we want to look for active participation. We want to be there in case the suppliers have any questions or issues. We also want to be checking to make sure that there are no invalid bids coming into the market. And if there are invalid bids, we want to make sure that suppliers are responding to those invalid bids. Also, it is possible to edit a published event. So while you're monitoring the event, if you do notice something that needs to be changed, there is the ability to edit that published event. When you do edit a published event, it's important to make sure that you either update the changes or you revert the draft back to the previous published version. Sometimes you might edit the event to go see how something is set or how something needs to be changed or whatever the case may be, so you click on Actions Edit. As soon as you do that to a published event, that creates a new draft version of the event. So if you make a change, we need to update the published version with those changes, or we need to revert that new draft that you just created and take it back to the last published version. If we don't update or revert the draft and we leave it pending in that draft version, the event will always appear as open in reporting. So it's important to make sure that we close out any edits that we did by updating or reverting. And then when you do update a published event, there are options to keep responses and send notifications, which we'll see in the demo. Once the event closes and moves into pending selection, it's now time to award the event. SAP Ariba offers 3 options for awarding. We have a manual scenario, which allows you to just select a winner from the participants who have submitted a bid. We have optimization scenarios, which allow you to use criteria to select a winner. This is helpful for large events with a lot of items. You can actually use profile criteria and other criteria from the event, such as questions, answers to the questions, to select a winner. The third option is that you actually don't award it at all within the system and manually complete the event and by moving it into the completed status. We do have a webinar on awarding events as well if you want more information on this process. But do keep in mind that once an event is awarded, it cannot be modified in any way. And just in case it wasn't clear in the point above, we've got another point here, more information on awarding in an upcoming webinar. So make sure to tune into that one too. So some best practices when we're working with content. We want to make sure that we're using the appropriate RFP template to suit our needs. So we've got 3 different RFP templates. We don't have, if you need more help understanding the differences in the types of RFPs, we've got another webinar on templates that you can tune into for more information on that. Also, copy out-of-the-box templates to make changes. In fact, it even does require that you do this in that the owner of the out-of-the-box template is Ariba system, and it will not allow you to edit that. It will only allow you to make a copy. And also add content into your templates that should always be present in all events, such as a welcome message or the support contact information, so that way users don't have to add the content over and over again. Again, this would be a best practice for an administrator. When the event owners are creating their events, we do recommend also that you use prerequisite questions to hide content. For example, you might have a prerequisite question that is an NDA. The supplier needs to sign a non-disclosure agreement prior to accessing the content of the event. So we can add a prerequisite question asking them to upload their signed NDA agreement before they are able to view any of the content of the event. I also recommend that you enable response teams in the template rules or within your event to ensure that suppliers can work together as a team. If the response team is not established, suppliers will participate separately of one another. So, for example, if I have 2 users from Acme Company, user 1 will prepare a response and user 2 will prepare a separate response for the same company. If they are added as a response team, user 1 and user 2 will create and work on the same response together. So there will only be one response from Acme Company. We also recommend that you publish the event and participate as a supplier prior to inviting the actual supplier. This is helpful so that you can actually participate in the event. You can walk through the steps. You can do what suppliers do just to make sure that everything is fluid and looks good and suppliers won't be confused. I also recommend that you start planning your events as soon as possible. The more time you have to prepare, the better the event will be. And the results will be better as well because you've planned out the event and it will run efficiently and hopefully maximize your savings. Also, we recommend that you customize email notifications to provide a personal touch to those messages. It does allow you to customize those messages in 3 different places. You can do it at the site level, at the event level, or at the template level. So it just depends on how often you need to use that particular message as to where you would customize it. But it does help to provide your own language in the email notifications that go out from events, so suppliers feel like they are working with you and you can maintain that relationship. When updating published events, as we mentioned before, always update any changes or revert the draft when no changes need to be published. And if you aren't awarding the event in SAP Ariba, we do recommend that you complete the event manually to change the status from pending selection to completed. So that way when you are reporting on events, you know if a decision has been made, if that event has actually been completed, or if it was never awarded. If all of the events remained in pending selection, you wouldn't know which ones have been awarded outside of the system and which ones are still pending that award, in which case the ones that are awarded, you can move manually to that completed status to identify which events have not been awarded and which events have been. With that being said, we're going to go into our demo now, and we're going to go into creating an RFP, reviewing and publishing, adding team members, suppliers, and content, and monitoring that event. So let's get logged into our site here. Of course, while we were doing the demonstration, it was logged out, so give me 1 second. Type in my username, type in my password. Okay, when we're logged in, it takes us directly to our dashboard. From here, there are 2 places where I can create an RFP. I can, from my Common Actions portlet, I can click on Create Sourcing Project from here, or I can use the blue Create button and choose Create and choose Sourcing Project. The options that I'm going to have here will depend on permissions. So you can see I have a lot of permissions. I have the ability to create a lot of events. Give me 1 second here. Sorry about that. I have the ability to create a lot of different project types and a lot of different things, and that's because of my permissions. I usually use this blue Create button at the top because depending on the tab that I'm on, I might not have my Common Actions portlet to create my sourcing project, but no matter the tab I'm on, I will always have this blue Create button. Anyway, whether I want to create a quick project or a full project, I'll click on the option Sourcing Project. And it's here where I can start providing information to create my sourcing project. We mentioned earlier that here we see the project field, and I can choose between a full project and a quick project. Depending on my selection here, the fields will change. So for example, you can see right now I've got quick project selected, and these are the fields that I have available. If I switch over, especially event type, if I switch over to full project, we'll see that not only do more fields appear, but I also no longer have the event type field. So for today, we're going to be creating a quick project. I always skip over the name. We do need to provide a name, and it's actually pretty important. We want to make sure that that name we give to our event is meaningful and that it provides some information so that when I'm searching for this event or reporting on this event, I see what's important about it. So for example, I might say, this is Q2 2017, and we could call it packaging event. So I know that it is from Q2 of 2017, and I know that it's for packaging. You as an organization can decide what types of information are going to be important to be in the title, but hopefully you can come to a conclusion as to what types of information would be helpful to have here in the event. So going through the rest of the creation screen, I have the ability to provide regions, departments, just other information that helps me classify this event or clarify what this event is going to be about. And then when I go to report on it, it helps me classify the data. Right now, there aren't a whole lot of required fields on this page. You can see, for example, I have the event type is required and the test project is required, but aside from that, none of these fields are required. You can request that some of these fields be made required. For example, if you do want to make sure that all of your events have a region, you can make that field required. You can also request the creation of custom fields here. If you want to have any custom fields added to the overview, you can submit a ticket to support, and they might be able to create those fields for you, or we'll point you in the direction of the team that can create those fields for you depending on how much customization you'd like to have done. So once I select my event type, the system is then going to display some additional fields again. So I'm going to choose RFP, and now I get things like baseline spend and target savings. Since the system knows what kind of project I'm going to create, it gives me additional fields that are relevant to those that particular event type. So also because I chose RFP, I now have templates available down here. So I'll fill out whichever fields I need to fill out. So let's do select a region, select a department, and these are all of these values for regions and departments can be uploaded so that they pertain to your specific organization. Same with commodity. So I'll choose the commodity as well. Actually, I guess I should go with packaging, huh? So you go to search for more. then the system's going to display a screen where I can search for all of the commodities that we have uploaded in the system. And as I mentioned before, you can upload your own commodities here. So I'll just do packaging. First, I'm going to uncheck this, and let's do packaging materials. And we'll say done. And now I've got my commodity, I've got my region, I have my department. I can put in a baseline spend, I can put in target savings, I can put in the length of the project. So let's say this is a 12-month contract. And then down below, this is where I'm going to choose my template. Now, hopefully your site will be a little bit more organized with the number of templates that you have available to you, because here we've got a whole bunch of them. So I'm going to choose this demo request proposal template. There is a template question associated with this, and I'm going to say that no, we don't require a CPO approval. These template questions will add content to the template or to the project that I build based on the answer to the question. It's something that's set up by the administrators. So I'll just say no, and then I'll scroll back up to the top and click Create, or also there's a Create button down here at the bottom. So as I mentioned, hopefully you guys won't have, your site won't have as many templates available as our test site does. Always forget the test project. It's been 8 years and I still forget to mark that as a test. So I'll mark it as a test, click on Create, and now the system is going to go ahead and create my event. The first place it takes me to is our event creation wizard, which we saw in the slide. This is where I have my 5 steps to create my event, and it walks me through the different steps and allows me to configure certain things. So the rules are, as we mentioned, broken down into different sections. We have timing rules, bidding rules, currency rules, and market feedback rules. There are additional sections that are not visible here because our template administrator has hidden those, and actually this is the default setting. So these are the default rules that are available to you when using the out-of-the-box RFP template. So we can set a response start date. This is when the event is going to open for responses for the suppliers to submit those responses. You can also set a reminder on that start time. So if I wanted to, for example, I could say the event's going to start tomorrow, and it's going to start at 9 a.m. Wrong box. So I can say 9 a.m. Scroll down through. And you can also change this. So if you wanted it to start at 9:05, for example, you could. No problem there. It just provides every 15-minute interval in that drop-down menu for you. You can also, as I mentioned, you can set a reminder. So if I wanted to do that, I can check this box to enable a reminder, and then it allows me to choose. And these reminders basically just send a notification to the participant, reminding them that the event is about to open. So it just kind of triggers their memory to be like, oh yeah, I have an event I need to be participating in. So those are optional. You don't have to enable those or not. This one is going to require me to do so, so I need to uncheck that box and then click OK. Now I can get away from that. As for the due date, you can choose a duration. It's going to be set to 30 minutes by default. You can also set a reminder on the due date, but you can also use a fixed time. So let's say I wanted this one to be open for a week. I can select April 21st, and let's say we'll close at 5 p.m. And this is going to match your time zone. So my computer and my time zone is set to Eastern time, so it's going to close at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So you want to make sure that you have it close at the time, at the specified time, but using your time zone. So if you wanted to close at 5 p.m. Eastern, but you're located in California, you would want to make sure that that event is closing at 2 p.m. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 2 p.m. Math and I don't get along. But you get the idea. It matches your particular time zone, so you want to adjust your start time and end time to match the desired time based on your time zone. The next section is the bidding rules. Here is where you can choose whether or not you want to enable scoring on participant responses. This, by default, is set to yes, which shows you the default grading method and whether or not we're enabling blind grading. If I switch that to no, those rules disappear. So the rules are conditional based on answers to some of those rules. So for this particular event, I'm going to leave that set to no. We're not going to enable any scoring. It's the same thing with the currency rule. I have the ability to select yes here, and then I get additional rules where I can allow whether or not allow the participants to see the exchange rates or not, and then also to select what that exchange rate set will be. Lastly, in the market feedback section, the only rule we have available is whether or not the owner can see responses before the event closes. And basically what that rule means is whether or not the owner is going to be able to view whether or not a supplier has submitted a response in the event before it moves into pending selection. Okay, the next step is the team. So you can either click on team over here on the left, or you can click on next, and the system will move you to the team tab. So here, this is where we add the users that are going to be helping us in our event process, whether it's with creation or with monitoring after we create. This is where we add those users. So we can see here that all of these groups have been added, and these are coming from our template. So all of these groups are added to the template so that they are always part of every single event that is created. And you can also see that there are some groups, like I can't click here and delete these groups because these come from the template and I'm not allowed to remove them. You can also notice that some of the groups have an add more link. So I can add more to the project owner or to the surrogate bidders group, but I cannot add additional users or even actually to the observers, but I cannot add additional users to the administrators. For example, I don't have an add more or a drop down. That's also controlled by the template. So I can either add additional users. I can also click on add group. This allows me to create a custom group that would only be part of this particular project. And so I can give this group a name. This might be something like auditors or some group that you might need to have here. You can assign a role to this group. When you click on select, it shows you all of the available roles. There are a bunch of them that you can assign to different people, to different groups, and that will determine what they can do inside of this event. The most common ones are observer, team member, or active team member. In most cases, auditors don't need to do anything other than view it. So we can give them observer team member, and that means that they are able to view this event, but they can't make any changes to it. So once I give it a title and give it a role, I can click OK, and now I have a new group added onto the project, onto the team tab. Here, I have auditors. It puts it in alphabetical order, and I can add users to it. So for example, I can click on this dropdown. It shows me users that have been recently selected. If I don't see the user I'm looking for, I can go to search more. It takes me to a list of every available user in the site. So I can search for myself, I find my user, and I can add it. Okay. Members of the team tab can be, as we can see, system groups, custom groups, or individual users. So we can see that from the administrator group, we have the event administrator group as the member. So anyone assigned to that event administrator group is automatically added as a team member to any project where the event administrator group is added as a member of a team project group. Same with sourcing manager, commodity manager, and customer administrator. But then we can also see that Randall Schwalm has been added as an auditor, so just that user, not a group. Okay, the next step is suppliers, so I can click over here, and that'll take me to the suppliers tab. So this is where I can invite my participants. So by default, there won't be any participants here because it's not possible to add participants to a template. So you would have to add your participants once you create your event. So I can click on invite participants to create to invite existing organizations within my spend management site. Or I can create a supplier research posting, which creates a discovery posting on Ariba Discovery and sends out notifications to suppliers who match that particular posting, who match the commodity and the location. They can then choose whether or not they want to respond, and it provides a way for you to provide a new supplier or to find a new supplier and invite them to this particular event along with your existing suppliers. But so in this case, we're just going to be inviting participants that already exist. So I'm going to click on the Invite Participant button. It again gives me an opportunity to create a supplier research posting, but it also gives me the ability to search for existing supplier organizations. So if I already know what those organizations are, I can use these search filters to find them. So for example, I might be looking for a supplier by the name of Randy. So I can search Randy in the contact name, and it brings me back all of the suppliers with the contact name of Randy. And so we find several different organizations, and let's invite Randy's supplier. And because I have boxes here, I can actually invite more than one at a time. But if I do want to do another search, so let's say I wanted to invite Sharon next, I would need to click OK so that these two suppliers are invited, and now click Invite Another Participant. Also, you see I have a button that says Create New Participant. This is what I mentioned before. We want to make sure that we do a search to see if that organization already exists before we create a new participant. And also, if you use SAP Ariba Contract, it's possible that you have organizations that don't have users in them, and you might want to invite one of those contracting organizations to an event. In order to do that, you would need to create a user inside of the organization. We can't invite an organization to an event. We have to invite a user, and a user is part of an organization. And so now that I have gone back in here, I can search for Sharon and see if I find anything, and I don't. So that would be the case where I can now create a new one. Because I don't have anything for Sharon, so I click on Create New Participant. Here it's going to allow me to create a new participant. So here it's for the user, so it's the user ID, the name of the user, that particular user's email address, but then also I can create an organization for them, or I can add them into an existing organization that's already on the site. So this would be the case of where, let's say we already invited Randy's supplier, and the contact is Randall. But let's say there's another supplier named Chris from Randy's supplier company, and we want to add him to participate in the event. So I could create a user ID for Chris, and then select an existing organization and add him into one of the organizations that already exist. And I've used Randy's supplier before, so it appears here, so I can select that. And now I'm creating a user directly in this organization inside of my event. But again, we want to make sure that we are only creating a new participant when one does not already exist. So I'm going to cancel that. We don't need to create a new user. We already have a couple invited here. Using some of these buttons here, I have the Set Clear option, although let me invite one more user. And this time I'm going to switch contact name to organization name. So to do that, I just clicked on the drop down here and switched the field that it's searching on. And this time I'm going to search for Randy's supplier because I want to invite another contact from this organization. So in fact, we'll invite all of them. And we'll click OK. Okay, so right now we see that these two suppliers, Randy test supplier, are from the same organization, but they're invited as separate organizations. So I can actually check both of these, go to the Set Clear, and then choose Response Team. When I click on Response Team, the system now makes this a response team so the suppliers can prepare the same response as we mentioned during the presentation. So now, both Archwalm and Randy Test Supplier will be preparing the same response back to me as the buyer, instead of preparing separate responses for one another. I can also set a supplier as an incumbent. So let's say JWRAL is my current supplier. So I might want to also go to the Set Clear and choose incumbent. That then changes the incumbent column from no to yes. Then also the response team, you can see a yes here for Randy Test Supplier. You can also use Excel. If you click on the Excel import button, it does allow you to export the event to Excel and invite the participants using Excel. Sometimes that can be faster if you have a lot of users to invite to a particular event. If you have the appropriate permissions, you can actually create users while importing in Excel as well. So if you have a lot of suppliers to create, you can do that here as well using the Excel file. Okay, the next step is the meat of the event, and that is our content. So we switch over to step 4. We have our content. These 3 sections have been provided by default, so our template gives us introduction, commercial terms, and pricing for any RFP template that comes out of the box from Ariba. You can choose whether or not you want to keep these, add these, delete them, however you want to manage that. The actions menu here gives me some options as to what I'd like to do. With this, I can view as any of the invited participants. I can also translate the content if I have the translator permission assigned to my user ID. From here, I can add all of these different types of content, so section, table section, line item, question, requirement, attachments from desktop, attachments from library, and content from library. Adding content from library can be helpful if you have a sourcing library that has content that can be used for events. You can also add content into the template so that it's automatically there when the event is created and doesn't need to be copied in from the library. But for example, you might have a sourcing library that has content for a packaging event, for a waste removal event, for an office supplies event. So whenever a user goes to create that particular kind of event, they can go into the sourcing library and pull in the content that pertains to the particular type of event that they're trying to run. Okay. Depending on how I want to add additional information, I can click on the title. So let's say I want to add a requirement into the introduction that welcomes the suppliers to the event. I can click on the title introduction, and then from here I get a list of things to add, and that will add it directly into the introduction section. It'll make it 1.1. I can also check the box to the left of introduction and then click on add and then choose requirement, and that will also create 1.1 and put it inside of the section. If I don't check this box or click on the title introduction and I just click on add and choose requirement, it will automatically add that as number 4. It'll add it afterwards. So where you click will determine where your content is going to be added. As a best practice, I usually just click on the title and then choose what I want to add so that I know it's going into the correct section. So here I can just provide some text to the supplier. A requirement, although it sounds like it might be something that the supplier has to give you, a requirement is just some text that you are sharing with the supplier. So I could say something like, welcome to my event. Thanks for participating. And I can, from here, I can either add additional things. So I might also want to put a question into the introduction. I can do that directly from here, or I can click on done. And it's going to add my question, or my requirement, I should say, into the introduction section. So I've got an introduction and it says, welcome to my event. You might also provide other requirements with instructions on how the event runs, how they're expected to respond to the particular event, any timing guidelines or content along those lines can be added into the template. Then the commercial terms, you can choose whether or not you want to keep this section. I'm not going to for the purposes of our demo today. So I'm going to check the box to the left of commercial terms and then click delete. The system will give me a confirmation to ask me if I'm sure I want to delete this. I'm going to click OK, and now I just have those 2 sections, my introduction and my pricing. Okay, so let's also add a question, and we'll put that also into our introduction section, or I might even want to create a new section. So let's check the box for introduction, let's click add, and let's choose section. When I do that, because I clicked the box for number 1, it's going to make this 1.2. I don't want this to be a section inside of section 1. I would rather it come after. So I'm going to click the add after button, and now it's going to make it number 2. And we can title this question. Now, because a section is just a title, and maybe a description if you want, this is where it's helpful to be able to click Add and then choose Question. So now I'm going to be creating a question that I want the supplier to respond to. And I want this particular question to be a prerequisite response, meaning it's going to block their view of the event content until they respond to this particular question. So I'll say, please sign and upload a copy of the NDA. You can, in the reference documents, attach a copy of the NDA for them to download and sign. But here is where we can set this as a prerequisite question. I can choose yes and no restrictions, yes with an access gate on event content, or yes restricting response submission. So I'm going to choose yes with an access gate on event content. Because I chose yes, that it is a prerequisite question, now I have another rule that says the owner must review responses before participants can continue with the event. By default, this is set to no. In the case of a non-disclosure agreement, we do recommend that you change this to yes, just to ensure that the supplier has indeed signed the NDA. They can upload any document here, and that would satisfy the requirement and give them the ability to view the content, even though it might not be the NDA that you've requested. Also, in this particular case, we'd want to make sure that the answer type then is set to attachment. This is going to give the supplier the ability to upload a response. They'll see a link like this that says attach a file, where they can upload the signed version of the NDA. If you're not creating a prerequisite question and the answer type is not an attachment, there's several other answer types available to you, such as text, single line limited, single line, and multiple line. This refers to how much text the supplier can provide you with a response. Text single line limited is a 250 character limit. Text single line is a 2,500 character limit. And text multiple line is an unlimited character limit. So depending on how large the response you'd like from the supplier will be or is, you can add the answer type that is appropriate for the length of the response that you're looking for. Also, whenever you are working with text, in here, if you are copying from another program such as Microsoft Word, when you paste the content into this box, be sure to select this Remove Formatting button. This is going to remove any formatting that you did copy from Microsoft Word that Ariba doesn't support, and it can prevent your content from being distorted because of things that it can't read, such as rich text. Once it's in here, though, you can change the font. These are the supported fonts that you can use. You can change the size, you can change colors, you can do what you need to do, underline, indent, bullet. All of the editing tools are listed here. So that's where we would recommend that you format your text, is inside of the box itself. As we were mentioning, though, before, there are multiple answer types, and you can actually also, for example, if I choose text single line, I get an acceptable values field. By default, that's set to any value. I can switch this to list of choices, and then down below, I can add in my choices. So if I want to make a multiple choice question, that's how I would do it. The answer type of text, and then for the acceptable values, a list of choices. I can also choose who the response is required from. Is it required by the participant? Optional for the owner, and the participant cannot respond, but it's required for the owner and optional for the participant. So you have different options, and you can actually add questions that are internal for your own users. However, in an event, internal users can't participate. Only supplier users can be invited to events. So if a question is marked as owner required, it needs to be answered before the event is published by the owner of the event. Okay, another type of content that we can add is a lot, and that lot is what is going to give us our pricing. Probably should have not canceled that. But so, because a lot is pricing, I'm going to click on the pricing section, and I'm going to choose to add a lot. In the default template, we only have the ability to create a lot type that is a basket with no items. This is bidding at the lot level and competing at the lot level. We're not actually collecting any item pricing. So we'll give it a name. We'll call this lot 1. And this lot is going to collect a pricing for our packaging materials. So let's say it's plastic wrap. Although, because it's a lot, we'll just go with lot 1. We can choose whether or not this lot is going to be visible to the participant. Because we're looking for bids from the suppliers, it doesn't make sense for it not to be visible. So we would leave that set to yes. And down below, we have our lot term. By default, the lot comes with extended price and savings. There is no quantity, so the supplier is just providing us with a price. So they would just be giving us an overall price for the entire good or service that we've added as our particular lot. Then savings is calculated by a formula. That's what this little f of x means. And it allows you to see what you have paid in the past by providing a historic value. And it will subtract that from the actual bid that you've received from the lead bidder in the RFP to give you then that savings value. Okay, so we can provide an initial value. The ceiling and initial, this is the top value, so no supplier can bid over $1,000. And it can also be the initial value that populates in the box for the supplier when they log into the event. My historic value is what I've paid in the past. I'm going to put in my previously paid price. The reserve value, this isn't something that you have to provide, and you can choose whether or not it's visible to the supplier. But this is the price that you are willing to pay. So the ceiling is the highest price the supplier can pay. The historic is what you've paid in the past. The reserve is what you'd like to pay. There are some options here as well. You can set participant-specific values. So if you wanted to start the suppliers off at different prices, you could set participant-specific values, and it would allow you to then specify what starting price each supplier has. You can also set the number of decimal places that are accepted. So if you're bidding on very small items, such as connectors or very small things, it might come down to 4 or 5 decimal places. So you can do that by clicking on Set Decimal Places here. And you can also see the participants that have been invited to this particular lot. You can choose which suppliers are invited and which suppliers are not. So for example, if I don't want Randy supplier to be invited to this particular item, I can check the box and then click Remove. Now, Randy supplier is still invited to the event, but he's not invited to this particular lot. So you can actually control invitations at the item or lot level. And now I can also provide participant-specific initial values for extended price. So I could start JWRAL at 1,000, and I could start Randy test supplier at 800. And those initial values might be coming from the auction or from the previous event. I mean, because we're creating the RFP, we haven't had the auction yet. So now that I've created the lot, I've filled out all the information, I can click Done, and my lot's now been created. Notice though that there was no quantity here, so I'm providing the extended price and that's it. That's all there is to it. I get my extended price and my savings. I can also click on pricing and add a line item. When I add a line item, you'll see that a lot of this setup is the same. I still have the commodity and whether or not the response is required, but now I have the ability to choose whether the participants are bidding per unit or if they're bidding on all units. So right now, it's set to participants bid per unit. So I have a box for the price, and I have a formula to give me extended price. So the system is going to take the price that the supplier provides, multiply it by the quantity that I provide to give me an extended price. So I can put in 1,000, same with our historic, we'll put in 1,500, and then our quantity will be 10. I can click on Actions, Update Totals, and it's going to go through and calculate those values for me. So we can see that my extended price is $10,000 because it took the 1,000 price, multiplied it by my quantity of 10 to give me $10,000. And then it also shows me that my savings is $5,000 because my historic price was $1,500, but now I'm only paying $1,000. So the system automatically calculates those for me. If I switch it, however, to participants bid on all units, we'll see that the extended price is now what I'm providing, and it takes that extended price and divides it by the quantity to calculate a price. So it just depends on what value you want the suppliers to give you to determine what you're going to choose here. Also notice, though, the default terms in the line item are price, quantity, extended price, and savings. You can add additional terms by clicking on the Add button, choosing Term. These terms are the elements that make up the cost of the item. So I can select from existing terms. For example, there are bonus and penalties, there's discount amounts, there's index names, there's lead time, there's manufacturer names, material codes, all kinds of different things that I can add that will help me to better identify that particular line item or collect additional pricing information. If you don't see a term that you need here, you can also click on New Term, and in fact, the best practice would be to always create a new term so that you know how that it is built the way that you need it to be built, because you never know how somebody else created a term to work. And so you can provide a name and an answer type and how this particular term is going to work, whether or not it has a historic value or a reserve value. All these things can be set up when you're adding a term into your line item to collect additional pricing terms. Okay, and so whenever you're done adding your pricing terms and setting up your line item, you can click on Done. And now we have our lot and our line item, and we can see that there's a little bit of a difference in that I've got a few more boxes on the line item. So line items are good for SKUs, for part numbers, for things that actually do have a quantity, whereas lots are better for services that don't really have a quantity and just kind of an overall value. Okay, so once we add our lots and line items, the next thing we're going to do is go to our Summary tab. And the Summary tab is going to show us any issues that we have. So right now we have a warning at the top here that says the event allows suppliers to select a bidding currency, but we need to select an exchange rate in the currency rules section. So I'll return back to my rules tab, and I'll go to my currency rules, and I'll see, oh, yep, I did say allow them to select their bidding currency. So I'm going to switch that to no, make those other rules disappear. Now I can go back to my Summary tab, and this is where I want to review my event for completeness and correctness. So if I scroll down through, it shows me all of the sections that are here. I have my overview, my team members, my timing rules, bidding rules, currency rules, the invited participants, and all of my content. So make sure you give a scroll through this page just to make sure that everything is correct, because once you click on the Publish button, it is going to be launched out for suppliers to see. So they'll receive an invitation email, and they'll be able to log in and start viewing this event. So I'll go ahead and click on the Publish button. Again, remember this could be subject to approval based on your organization's setup. However, mine is not. So I clicked on Publish. Now it says, what would you like to do next? And so we're going to monitor the event. Now that it's published, suppliers can log in and access the event. However, if you remember, we set the start time. So if I click on Overview, we set the start time to be, and we go down to the timing rules, to be 9:05 tomorrow morning. So because of that, time remaining in preview is 13 hours, 38 minutes, and 20 seconds. And that's because the bidding start time is not until tomorrow morning. So suppliers can log in, they can view the event, but they cannot respond to it yet. So if they could respond to the event, you would be monitoring the content tab. And so we can actually jump out of this event at this point and go to an event that has more responses in it so that we can look at that. So I'm going to click on the logo to return back to my dashboard. And then we can take a look at this. So in this event, we can see that we have multiple responses from multiple suppliers. We have EDU 11, EDU 12, and EDU 13 who have submitted responses in this particular event. And not only have they submitted responses, but they've also provided different types of responses for the different regions and for the different types of paper that we're looking at. And so this is kind of a lot of information to be analyzing and monitoring and responding to. So the system provides us with a bunch of different tools that we have to monitor this particular event. So I can use my table options menu to turn things on or off. For example, if I don't want to see the initial or historic columns, I can actually come in here and turn those off so that they're not in there anymore. And in order to do that, I would click on participant under actions, perhaps. Participants, yep, just got to scroll up a little bit further until the stop and click on that. In here, it shows me all of the suppliers that have responded, as well as those historic and initial columns that I can remove if I am only interested in viewing the prices that were submitted by the suppliers side by side. The table options menu also gives me the ability to turn off any additional columns or rows. I can expand all of the different sections. If I have things, I can collapse them all as well. So if I just want to see all the different sections, I can do that using the table options menu. I can then also expand them all again. And I can also use the filter option to help me go to the particular section I want to look at. The suppliers tab shows me all of the different suppliers that have been invited, team. The reports tab shows me information about the particular event. So the historic price, the leading price, any savings, if it's been awarded. As we can see, this one is in the completed status, so it's been awarded, and we can see that awarded information. There's also some invitation summaries and some response summaries, so you can get a quick view of the participation in this particular event. And you can download a whole bunch of different reports here as well to get information about that event, such as bid changes, full bid data report, question and terms report. These will all help in the analysis of the bids that you've received. And then you would create scenarios. So we see here that we've got some scenarios that have been created to help us pick a winner. So the system has optimized a bunch of these. We'll talk more about scenarios and awarding events in the upcoming webinar on awarding events. But so when you're monitoring, you have all the ability to look through all of these. The event would obviously be open. You would have responses coming in. But since we don't have active participants in our other event, I just thought it might be helpful for us to take a look at another event that has many more responses. So I can see the bids that are coming in and understand what that looks like and what I need to do to monitor that particular event. I can also go to the Messages tab, and any messages that have been sent either to or from the participants can be found here. As the owner, I can also click on the log, and I can view all of the activities that have happened in this particular event. Sometimes you might not see certain actions in here, but if you do click on the table options menu again, at the very bottom, there's Show User Logs, and that provides more detail on the activities that have happened inside of this particular event. This log tab, however, is only available to the event owner. It is important we mention that you can actually edit an open event. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard, and we're going to go back to my open event. And so let's say I'm looking through, I'm monitoring my event, and I see something is incorrect. Let's say I need to change the title, or maybe my item, there's a typo in my item name and I need to fix that. So because this event is running, I can still change it. I can click on Action and choose Edit. I can go to my content, and I can click on the title, and I can choose Edit. And we can just say, let's say we're going to give it a new name. Maybe I wanted to provide more description because I published my event and the responses that were coming in from suppliers, the bids didn't seem exactly correct for the item, so I came in to provide a more specific title on my lot. So I'm just going to say new title and click on done. Now I'm going to do the same thing I would as if I were publishing the event the first time. I'm going to go to the summary tab. System will again show me any problems that I have. I don't have any, but it's also going to show me that there is one change pending. So it shows me that the published version, the name was lot 1, and the draft version, the one that I'm working on now, the name is lot 1, new title. I can click on this to view more details to see what exactly changed, because the details just say definition. So if I want to see if anything else was changed in there, I can view the details and see what's different between this version and this version. I can then click on update. So one thing though is to make sure you check this responses removed column. Certain edits to running events can cause responses to be removed. But since no responses are going to be removed, I'm going to click on update. When I do that, the system shows me this page where it asks me what I would like to do with the existing responses and whether or not I'd like to email the participants regarding this change. We recommend that you select keep and either email or do not email. If you do choose to email the participants about the change, the email notification that goes out by default is very generic, and it just says that the event has changed. It doesn't specify what change has been made. So if you do want to send the email notification, we would recommend customizing the email notification first to let the suppliers know what exactly has been modified, and then update the event and choose to email them. Otherwise, we would recommend keep but do not email. For example, if you make a change that really doesn't pertain to the suppliers, such as you edited it to invite another supplier, the suppliers don't need to know that you've edited that event to invite a new participant, in which case I would choose keep but do not email. Once you make your selection here, just be sure that you do not select do not keep or the do not keep options unless you do want to remove all of the responses that you've received in the event so far. But I'm going to say keep and do not email, and then I'm going to click on update event. This is then going to publish the new version of my event. I'll click on monitor, and now we'll see that the new name of the item is there. Okay, so now at this point we're going to go back into our slideshow. Except I chose from beginning because I'm super good at that. Hang on one second. Okay, so we're back in our PowerPoint. That does it for our demonstration today, but we do want to mention our upcoming webinars. So on April 10th, we are going to be talking about some new features in the 2017 Q1 release. On April 12th, we'll talk about creating and managing a sourcing event in Asia Pacific and Japan friendly time zone. Also on April 10th, we'll be doing all about sourcing templates at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And April 19th, we'll be doing an introduction to the SAP Learning Hub. You can register to learn more about the Learning Hub. And then on April 20th, we'll be doing our next installation in Spanish, Las Plantillas de Sourcing. So if you are interested in having attending a Spanish webinar about all about sourcing templates, April 20th would be the time for that. And then April 26th, we've got Introduction to Form Builders for Procurement. And then on April 28th, Creating and Managing a Sourcing Event. So if you'd like to attend any of these, you can click on the register link in the slide deck. You can also click on the link down here below to view any of our previous webinars. So the BPC in your company, my name is Randall Schwalm. I am a senior consultant with the Best Practice Center. So if you would like access to consultants like myself and get strategic advice and guidance on getting the most out of your Ariba solution, you can contact your customer engagement executive who can give you more information on how the BPC can have an impact at your company. And so with that said, I would like to thank you all for your time and thank you for attending. If you do have any questions, please let us know. And I hope you all have a great day.